on sports!
All right. Good evening. We're minus the bitter one tonight, who's on a bitter roll of working. So we'll do this in honor of Baloney. Baloney. So this is Chris Oscar Fletcher, and I'll be Dave Meyer Finoli.
Very nice.
Please. So, on the good end, our beloved school has made the ultimate of national news with a feature article in Sports Illustrated.
It would have been better if it was the real Sports Illustrated, not the shit thing.
I thought the same exact thing. 5 years ago, this would have been really something special. But, with where we've been, we'll kind of take it.
Absolutely.
If they beat Austin Peay tomorrow, which they should, it will put us in a position that we have not been since, are you ready?
Go.
1953, 1954, where we started that year, I believe 16-0, ended up going 23-2. It is what I conceive as the greatest Duquesne team of all time. It hit number one at one point, finished number 3, and was upset in the NIT final. To Holy Cross by Tommy Heinsohn and Bob Cousy. Or else that team would have been unanimous AP, UPI. Certainly gotten greater accolades than the team the next year, which won our lone national championship. But that's some heady stuff. I mean, I don't care what schedule. I don't care they didn't play Pitt. We're not just beating these teams. We're beating the living snot out of these teams.
Well, apparently Jeff Capel doesn't care that they don't play Pitt either. So,
well,
and that's a shame. I mean, I hate losing yet another one of these local rivalries.
I agree. 50 years consecutive. Although we lose the high ground by canceling Robert Morse. For similar reasons, I'm sure.
All right.
Capel doesn't want to take the chance of losing to a team he is expected to beat the snot out of.
Right.
I'm sure replacing him with a Binghamton is their thing, but you know what? Fuck them. Pardon my language, but
nah, fuck them. I'm with you. Here's the thing, though. They're doing this without any kind of home court. That, to me, is just astounding.
Absolutely. You read that article, they have no showers in their practice facility, so they have to go a-stankin' back to the dorms to take a shower after practice. They're playing at a 1,000-seat stadium, which, on one end, it's almost impossible to get tickets because they're all taken by the season ticket holders. But on the other end, that's kind of a tough way to attract top level talent. Although I think their preseason schedule is better than it's been the last 3 years.
Oh, I don't think there's a whole lot of cupcakes, really, when you think about it, what they've done in the past. So, I think this is a solid 9-0. I really do.
I agree. And I think Loyola Marymount always presents a good, stiff challenge to anybody they play. And that second half against them, I mean, my God, it was men against boys.
Yeah, they clamped down. They really clamped down.
Absolutely. And if you can somehow beat UAB and Marshall to finish out undefeated going into A10 play, you don't have the toughest schedule in your first 5-6 games of the A10. You literally could go 18-0. There's a chance they could go 18-0 before they hit Rhode Island.
Well, I mean, this to me seems like you're looking at an at-large bid right now, and I can't believe I'm saying that, but it's how long has it been since we started having these conversations, and then it just tends to be something that's just a wild fantasy. But I think that maybe this year is an indicator of good things to come. I mean, you got to love the coach.
Absolutely. And even that A10 championship game they lost in, I think it was Everhart's second or third year to Temple, you never even then, you never got the feeling they were going to win that game.
No.
So, I mean, this is heady stuff. I mean, this is heady stuff. I even in my head, I'm starting to plan out where are we going to watch this selection. I mean, that's the dream.
Well, and then you add the women's team on top of it, and you've got quite a program going.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Louisville's the only one I can think who matches them. They were both their teams were 9-1, so basically the same record as the Duquesne two. I know the girls are playing tonight, and that's a team basically lost any legitimate player it had after last year.
Right.
So I was expecting, I don't know about you, but I was expecting a struggle this year.
Yeah. And hats off to Dan Bart, too. I mean, he is a hell of a coach. I mean, they've got two pretty strong coaches.
Absolutely. I mean, he is the king of women's basketball in Pittsburgh, certainly. Pitt certainly got their asses kicked. But that was our only city game.
Talked about this a little bit before, is that Pitt has really stepped up in terms of its more Olympic sports. Yeah. I mean, volleyball, incredible. Their track and their soccer, both incredible.
Absolutely. And I mean, I look forward to seeing, they got one of the top guys at Florida State to run the baseball program, so I look forward to seeing what he can do. That's going to be maybe a little bit longer term. Wrestling in the top 10 now. Volleyball, number 2 in the country.
Right.
It was a shame. I actually was going to plan to go to the doubleheader last night at the arena, should Pitt have been in it. Unfortunately, upset by Cincinnati in the second round. But, as much fun as we're having on our Duquesne chat site on Facebook, it's painful to read the Pitt fans, no matter what sport. I read somebody actually bitching about the volleyball coach not being any better because he couldn't get past the second round. In what world? What are you expecting? You look back at Pitt football. You were one of the great programs in the country from 1915 to 1937.
Right.
1977 to 1981. That's it. This is what the program is. They're not putting in the money Alabama is. So if you win 7, 8, 9 games a year, that's, I don't know that you can expect anymore. I'm not sure what they're looking for.
I'm not either. And I think that the nice thing is that they're good for one upset a year.
Right.
I think we can pretty much do that. And they're a team that, if you're in the ACC, you really don't want to face them because of that. You could be the victim at any time.
Absolutely. And I think Narduzzi has got it stabilized. I think if he continues to put defenses like he did this year forward, he's going to win 8, 9 games a year. And that's not going to be good enough for him.
Well, but you know what? That's the best they can hope for.
Exactly.
I mean, if they wanted better, they should have held on to Dave Wannstedt. There was no reason to get rid of him.
Well, and the reason they got rid of him was because he was not bringing what they considered the proper element to campus. He embarrassed the school when they printed an article that Pitt had more arrests in a 2-year period than he said. It was 21. It wasn't, you're not talking 2 or 3. They had 21 arrests. So you can either accept that as a school or not. And Pitt chose not to, and you got to respect them. I mean, I think they understand better than some of the SEC schools that colleges are for education, although I'm sure we'd all love to be 12-0 every year.
Well, they knocked out. They were the only team that beat Clemson that season.
Exactly.
They're good for an upset. Let's just let's enjoy it. I just wish that they were a little bit more steady. Let's just say that. A little more consistent, because it is up and down. Yeah. And there are some games that look like they're not prepared for. Other games that they look like they've been shot out of a cannon. So, but it's also a very young team, Dave. I mean, that's the other part of it.
Absolutely. And it's a team that has huge deficiencies. I thought actually they were very well coached on offense because they don't have talent on offense. And
No,
they have
not
a bad offensive line. But Whipple I mean, I didn't think Pickett was capable of doing what he did this year, even though it, probably wasn't enough for them to be any better than they were. But I mean, I think they have good coaches in tow. It's just a matter of getting some better offensive talent on the line, because the line is going to dictate how good the quarterback is.
right.
The line was not good this year, but
And you're playing in a conference where you need to have a good line because there's some stuff there.
Yeah, absolutely. But it just I always, I guess maybe if we get to the point where we get bitter at that when we're winning 19 and 20 games a year in basketball, that'll be a good thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a lot of good things going on. I saw the Cooper field house is starting to look like the structure, which is kind of exciting. But also kind of leads into our topic of the evening, people who give back. We'll certainly start with two people we've worked with on our last two projects. Somebody I'm going to work at their Christmas charity function every year, which, Sean Gibson, his great-grandfather would be just proud as hell of him.
Yeah.
So he has a big Christmas festivities at one of the local high school or grade schools in Pittsburgh, and each of these kids is going to end up leaving with not just a gift, but a hell of a gift. I mean, they're very generous gifts. They're all going to end up with a good meal. They're going to be entertained, and it's just we're going to represent Kohl's, my Kohl's store down there, helping out for the day. And I can't, and I know you're the same way. I mean, we were both so proud to donate our royalties to Unlucky 21 towards them.
Absolutely.
And getting the opportunity with the Three Rivers book and Pittsburgh First to donate to the Chuck Cooper Foundation. As I wear the Celtic hat tonight in honor of Chuck Cooper, who was an amazing guy who we're just now finding out how amazing he was. A story that's been held for how many years. But Chuck does a wonderful job. He does a lot of good for African-American kids who want to further their education, providing them scholarship opportunities, also through mentoring to help these kids reach their potential. And just can't say enough about the job he does with that. Those are two names, Josh Gibson, Chuck Cooper, who are synonymous with greatness, not just on the field of play, but outside. Their relatives are doing a hell of a job keeping their names in line. But there's more. I mean, there's so much more. I know you've worked with Mario.
Right. And just some of the things that foundation has done. I was very proud to work with him early on when he was doing his golf tournament, and with him and both Tom Barrasso back in the early days being a part of that. That was certainly a great experience. And, you look at what Mario has done, and just, those neonatal intensive care units that they've put up there. They've put in rooms for families to be able to sort of hang out and be comfortable while they're waiting with their sick children. I mean, it's just it just never seems to stop. He's been really just an icon in charity, besides being an icon in sports. But this week that really got me, Dave, was I don't know if you caught the Heisman Trophy acceptance speech that Joe Burrow made.
I did not. Please tell me about it. I heard he because of his speech, whatever he was talking about generated incredible amounts of donations. So please let's.
Yes. So basically, quoting from him, he said, "Coming from Southeast Ohio, it's a very impoverished area, and the poverty rate is almost 2 times the national average. He said, there's so many people there that don't have a lot, and I'm up here for all those kids in Athens and Athens County that go home to not a lot of food on the table, hungry after school. You guys can be up here too. And it was really a pretty profound moment just watching that. And a couple of guys saw that, created some Facebook pages, created a couple of giving pages, and last time I checked, there was about $250,000 that was raised in that area. So, I mean, kudos to him.
Yeah.
But, Dave, we're always so quick to point out the foibles of these athletes. It's nice every now and then for us to sit back and look at some of the athletes that really are giving back. We saw Andrew McCutcheon coming back to Pittsburgh, doing a lot of clinics for kids. He's working with our friend Jim Lachima to do a lot of this stuff. And it was also nice to see that Andrew was named to the Decades All-Star team too.
Oh, that very well deserved. And talk a little about that, because that was, something he didn't have to do. He doesn't have his career in here, and I thought that was a tremendous thing he is building here. He is, and he still lives here. He and his wife live here, even despite playing in Philadelphia. He's a guy that you want to root for. It sort of ended badly here in Pittsburgh. I think that it was, unfortunately, his body was breaking down. Yeah. And, he just wasn't the player he was before. But, here's a guy who really resurrected that franchise. And he was part of that leadership team. And he was always very charitable when he was here, too. So for him to come back here was not a great surprise for me. Yeah. And then you have another local guy, Marquise Pouncey, doing a lot of things with kids, especially making what he does is interesting. He puts together tickets packages for kids to go to games with policemen, so that the kids get to know them a little bit and they establish a rapport, which I thought was a very cool thing to do. Yeah. So he was the Steelers nominee for the Walter Payton Award, which goes to the most charitable athlete, football player every year. Each team nominates a player to go to that. Right. And he does not get – you hear some of the stuff, again, as you said, people tend to point out some of the bad stuff that maybe he and his brother might have been involved in the past, which when you read the stories, you realize you're just trying to get clicks. This isn't really a story. But he's look at where they came from, Dave. They're very fortunate to have gotten out. I agree. I think he's done a lot. I think by focusing on that, you're not really seeing what Marquise Pouncey is about. By focusing on what he does, that's a guy that puts a thought into what he's doing. It's not just the generic athlete who gives such and such a percentage of his money and that's it. Here's a guy putting thought into how I can change things. Right. And I think that's incredibly understated what he contributes to the city of Pittsburgh. And it's nice to read about other athletes. Richard Sherman, he has a charity. It's called Blanket Coverage. They've been helping kids in low-income communities, giving them school supplies and clothing. But the thing he did a couple of weeks ago is he paid off all the lunch debt for an entire school district. Incredible. For all the kids. There's close to $50,000 he put out there. Yeah. You have people like Lindsey Vaughn. She started a foundation, and again, trying to work with young women and help build their confidence. Even Ronda Rousey, I was surprised to read. I was just about to mention her. She does a lot of things, particularly with making sure the kids are getting fed. So, it's good to see a lot of these things. Monet Davis is like 14 years old and has a shoe line that's benefiting kids too. So, it kind of restores your faith in humanity. It does. And Ronda Rousey has a great, again, putting thought into things. She pays for kids to get mental health services that unfortunately insurance companies are still fighting about whether these are valid things. Of course they're valid. They should be covered by health insurance. But Ronda Rousey makes sure that kids who need it are getting it. She's fought depression herself her entire life. Exactly, exactly. I was going to say she's doing her best to make sure these kids don't have to suffer the same way she did. Um, I mean, you look at LeBron James, and we've talked about him several times.
Yeah.
He can come off as an ass at times, but you know what? I think that's more confidence that he knows how to win a championship, which he does. But this guy always takes it to the next level with his hometown. The school which our Dukes visited the other day after I forget who they beat at the local high school there. But Dan Brott came in and he presented them with a donation from the university to the school that LeBron is funding. But he's done such a great job with working these kids, not only with his school, making sure the people of his foundation got a free education at the University of Akron.
Right.
He's trying to break the chains of poverty by making sure these kids get an education. And I mean, you're talking millions upon millions of dollars that he doesn't have. He can do the generic thing and that a lot of these guys do just to get rid of some tax deduction. But he takes it to the next level, and he's a pain in the ass with making sure these things are done right, and I respect that. And I respect LeBron, even though I would respect him a lot more in a Cavalier uniform. But you're learning the other end of that right now, aren't you?
I am. It's a nice run to see. But he does a lot of things with the Boys and Girls Club. He has this one X1 fund. I mean, the guy puts his money where his mouth is. He is trying to be a change agent, so you got to respect that.
Oh yeah, and
Serena Williams is another one. She's does a lot of things. She is. I mean,
she's probably the most generous athlete there is.
Well, I think actually, you know who the number one is?
Who?
Is Ronaldo.
Oh yeah. Ronaldo and Neymar both are up there with the jobs they do. Ronaldo does a tremendous job giving back. He really does.
Yeah, I mean, he paid $83,000 for a 10-year-old fan who needed brain surgery.
Yeah.
He also gave $165,000 to fund a cancer center in Portugal that treated his mother.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, he's just really talk about an international star who's doing the right thing. But yeah, you mentioned it's funny. You see a lot of the wrestlers,
right.
WWE wrestlers are very charitable in what they're doing. But it's just good to see.
Oh, it is, and actually the charity we're going to be working with, most likely with the Civic Arena book, is going to be the San Martino Foundation, which also does a lot of good within the city for children's education. So we're in the process of just learning a little more about it before we make the final decision. But that's certainly something that kind of gets lost in the shuffling around. And Roger Federer, here's a guy who I root against every time, quite frankly, because you get sick of seeing the same guys in and out. But outside, he goes to a different country and he creates these elaborate schools. I mean, we're not talking, just put up four walls, put a teacher in, and look, I gave you a school. I mean, these are elaborate things, and they're in areas of Africa that are about the most impoverished in the world. And again, putting these things in, trying to, break the circle of poverty by allowing these kids an education and whether they move on with their own lives in another country or try to help end the poverty in Africa. And again, why the hell is he doing that? I mean, he's not from there, but he sees a problem and he sees where his money can make the most bang for its buck and try to do the most good. And it doesn't want to make me root for him because, again, but
a good person.
He's a good person. He's a good person. The Beckhams for years have made sure that they contribute to the communities they've moved around in.
Well, Dwayne Wade's another one we really should talk about. Just building a number of homes for people who work done's another one. But Dwayne Wade, it was funny when he retired. It was a very powerful ad that Nike did, pulling together all the people that he had helped. And I don't know if you remember it, but the whole point of it was on his farewell tour, he was exchanging jerseys with other players.
Yeah.
So these people who he helped were actually exchanging jerseys with him, and
wow.
they would tell their story. It was a really powerful piece.
Well, he's a good guy. I mean, he was everywhere he went. He was always a good guy as far as Marquette with the Heat. I mean, he could have made a lot of money after a few years, but he wanted to stay. Not that they didn't pay him well; they paid him well, but he stayed down there and he was loyal to him, and I always respected that. But when you hear about what he does outside the court, I mean, it takes him to a whole new level. It really does. And there are just I mean, we even do it here at times, and shame on us for going overboard, and shame on me for dwelling on the Antonio Brown thing more than it should have been. But I mean, J.J. Watt, what he did after the Floods in Houston, just didn't have to do that. He didn't have to do that.
No.
And,
but it's interesting though. I mean, there are some guys that, and this is going to sound really awful, but they almost seem to do it for the wrong reason. Yeah. I mean, when you see Juju Smith-Schuster showing up at hospitals with cameras in tow, I understand you are giving back and you're trying to build your personal brand, but it comes off as hollow sometimes.
It comes off as real hollow, and you look at a guy like Sid Crosby. Yeah, you see him out there and you hear the stories, but it's never with the cameras. It's with somebody taking a selfie he goes to these places without the media. And that's where the respect is. And like he and Eli Manning, who gave $3 million for a clinic in Mississippi, but he does it silently. He doesn't take the press around with him. He doesn't want the notoriety.
Right.
And that's one thing that I always point out to people when they're from outside the city criticizing Sid Crosby, thinking he's just a whiny bad person. No, he's trying to get a penalty and help his team win. That's not his personality. I mean, the things this guy did when the Humboldt tragedy a few years ago, Crosby went in there and just donated his time, donated anything he could to help those kids get over that. And he did it quietly, and he did it, without cameras there. And you always see the selfies of him at the hospital trying to help kids on his own time. Not the ABs of the world who show
up 4 hours late for his charity appearance.
Then he comes with cameras.
Yeah.
So the look at me, look how great I am. It just irritates the hell out of me. I'm with you on that. But I mean, these are the stories we need to point out, and these are, Sean Gibson. I always go back to him, and certainly Chuck Cooper also. I mean, these are guys that get into the dirt. I mean,
Sean they Gibson, roll sleeves up and they do it.
Yeah, they're not just collecting money. They're in there doing these things. They're doing it without the cameras. They're doing it without, putting attention. The only time they put attention to themselves is when they're trying to solicit donations to help these kids. Chuck Cooper once told me of a story where, there were gangs that were infiltrating a basketball hoop where kids kind of keeping kids away from it, a basketball court in the hill. And, he went there basically to stick up for these kids. And basically you're putting your life on the line when you're doing that. But, he believes in, wanting these kids to have resources to, if it's basketball, get to be as good as they can so they can get a college education. So, I mean, you hear stories of that out there, not from them, but from people who know them, and certainly not from the press. These are guys that you just wish would get a little more press, but that's not their personalities. The
Oh,
personalities will get the job done.
well, you mentioned that Sports Illustrated article that came out talking about the Dukes. It was a nice little shout out in there to Chuck Cooper, so that was good to see.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's a current project I'm working on is his biography and the things you that we're just uncovering about him.
Isn't it crazy that last year was the year that this all sort of came out? You know, that and it was wonderful to see that he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and the fact that when he was, then Bill Russell steps up and says, "Yes, I need to be a part of this now that Chuck Cooper's in."
Because he was. I mean, here's a guy. A little known fact: he was the first Celtic to hold out because he wanted his fair share. He didn't want to get. So that was in his second year. That was a big controversy as I was bringing up the newspaper reports that he held out. His junior year, he actually was given contract offers from NBA teams. He could have been all by himself. He wouldn't have shared the limelight with Earl Lloyd. He wouldn't have shared the limelight with Harold Hunter or Sweetwater Clifton. But he wanted to come back to Duquesne for one more year. That is something that even his son didn't know about. There were just things about this guy. He was different. He was a hell of a singer, but he knew how tough it was for him out there. And despite that, he wasn't afraid to hold out for money he thought was fair. He wasn't afraid to say, "Hey, I'm going to go to Duquesne for another year because I think we got something special going." He was just a different kind of guy who put the cerebral into everything he did, and it wasn't just about the money, and it wasn't about the money at all, actually, and it wasn't about a place in history. If it was about a place in history, he would have promoted. That was half the problem, is he didn't want to promote himself as this guy. He wanted to do his job and move on. And it hurt his place in history until now, but damn it, you have to respect a guy that is more interested in his team winning, is more interested in taking care of his family than all the limelight he could have gotten.
Yeah, and David, it's really sort of it's a tough balance, because part of us really wants our athletes to stand up and to be good role models and to be good people in the community. But then there are others who say, wait a minute, you're an athlete. Why do we need to listen to what you're saying? So, it's just trying to find that balance and trying to be out there. I guess really what it comes down to for me is being authentic.
Exactly.
And it's not, we've talked about it a few times already tonight. It's not having the cameras there. It's doing that because it needs to be done.
Right. And that's, to me, that's the kind of guy Chuck Cooper was. He did things because they need to get done. And I agree with you. I think that's probably the one thing that does frustrate you is the media often, not all of them. It's certainly, you have a lot of reputable guys in the media that point out the good stories, the good reputable stories, but there are some that want to follow these guys and ooh and ah all over them. And I'm with you. I can't get into that. When you're bringing a camera crew with you into a hospital, it's about you. It's not about what you're doing.
Right.
That's the one thing. And the thing Sean Gibson's going to have tomorrow, a lot of members of the Pitt football team are going to be there that nobody knows about because, they're coming there themselves. They're not coming there with, the cameraman and, flipping Facebook Live on themselves. They're coming there to do a good deed. And I'm sure as hell gonna put them on Facebook myself who shows up, because that they deserve certainly the kudos for doing that and doing that for the good of the cause and not for the good of themselves.
Right.
Larry Fitz is a guy like that. Larry Fitzgerald does a lot for the community. He
does. And, he's just, you talk about role models. I don't know that there are many better role models than him. Just just a very thoughtful, intelligent guy who who makes himself available.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's for the University of Pittsburgh, even though he spent 2 years here and that's it, he makes himself a very good ambassador for the university. So again, nothing he has to do, but something he wants to do.
And I think Aaron Donald's following in that foot.
Huge. Both those guys, even though they play against you, you root for.
Right.
And makes you proud to be a Pitt fan. It really does, to see the greatness that can come out of your school, but guys who are not too big to want to help. Bill Freilich was that kind of guy, with Penn Hills especially.
Right. Well, it's about character. I mean, and character counts.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, we if nothing we've learned from the Steeler season this year, there it is. You need character. And I was at last night. I was at an event with Ben Sherrington and the new president,
right,
Tim Williams, I believe.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing Sherrington, he was asked basically, because that Boston Red Sox team he built in 2013. You remember it was done with a lot of seed level free agent signings and there wasn't a huge amount of star power on that team. There was some, but not a huge amount. And somebody asked him that question, what did he look for? And he said, you know what? You look for the character. You look for the good guys. You look for the guys who are willing to do for the team. Because that's the one thing, everybody's always pouncing on talent, but it's character that can win you titles. And that's the difference between this Steeler team and last year. Kelly got into trouble. And when I saw that this morning, my first thought in my head, okay, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do? This is your first blimp of badness. And they did what they needed to do. We're not going to take this year. You're gone.
What a difference a year makes.
It is, and you love when you can say, so, that so-and-so learned their lesson. So-and-so learned their lesson in this case. And
listen, I'm all about second chances. I think you need to give them.
Right.
But, more than that.
Well, there are levels. There are people that understand they've made a mistake. I'm not sure last night was one of them when you hear the description.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
But, it's funny, Dave. This may be one of the most well-liked Steeler teams that I can recall.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And you look at what they're putting on offense right now, and the offensive line is not playing well.
No, you got a fourth-string quarterback.
Yeah.
You got no real star receivers, although
James Washington is certainly stepping up. I wouldn't call him a star, but he's stepping up.
You're doing it with smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
But you also shouldn't be throwing the ball 38 times either against a tough secondary. That was just poor coaching.
That was a poor game plan, but on the other end, they couldn't gain an inch on rushing the ball. So I'm sure they were getting frustrated with that. But, you need a balance, and hopefully they get that against the Jets this week.
Well, I think they're going to be frustrated. I think we're going to see another tough game for Duck. We'll see what happens with it, though. But I think that the Jets have a good run defense.
Yeah,
so it's going to be a tough game for them. It's going to be tougher than most people think.
And actually, with Darnold, I saw a stat with him at home quarterbacking the team. They're 4-1.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be an easy game for sure. But again, we'll see what kind of guts they have in this one.
When's the last time they had an easy game?
Yeah,
it's not a team that's going to be having any.
We know on paper this is maybe a 4 or 5 win team. So.
Well, the nice thing is that most likely Baltimore will have nothing to be playing for. They won't be able to improve their position at all. So
no.
I would think if they're smart, they're going to rest a lot of people.
I'm sure they will. And you got to think they're going to rest Jackson because he's taking a lot of punishment this year.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm surprised he hasn't been out of the game yet. I mean, that was my prediction coming into the year, that anytime you have these kind of running quarterbacks, that it just catches up to you at some point during the season.
Sure. But you want to talk about a humble kid. He's a humble kid. He's a humble kid. I mean, I know he wears a Raven helmet on, but he's a kid you'd root for.
Well, I mean, and Harbaugh, too, as a coach. I mean, I got no problem with him. I don't. I think he does a hell of a job. I think for a guy who, well, I remember when they were talking about possibly making a move there, I thought, you guys are out of your minds. Because he's a good coach, and he was able to turn that team around and mold it to the talent level that they had.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And kudos for him. I thought the same thing. Same thing I think when people start whining about Tomlin. I think the same thing in Baltimore.
I think one of those two guys will be the coach of the year.
I think Harbaugh has
argue it either way.
Yeah, I mean, Tomlin may deserve it, but if he's going to finish 14-2 and 13-3 when nobody thought he'd be a 500 team, that I'd probably give my vote to Harbaugh at this point. He's going to be the number 1 seed.
Wow. How about here's another little thing that happened this week. For the first time since 2008, Tom Brady was not selected to the Pro Bowl team.
Yeah. Well, it's finally gotten to him. He's still, for a 43-year-old quarterback, he's still effective, but he's not Tom Brady anymore.
No, but he could be like Peyton Manning. He could have, in his farewell year, he could have his moments.
Yeah. And I hope this is his farewell year, because as a Michigan fan, I've never hated Tom Brady as others in Pittsburgh have. He gave you a lot of thrills at Michigan, and was misused. Should have been the man over Drew Henson the whole time. But I mean, you talk about Burrows. I see a lot of Tom Brady in him, the way he handles himself on the field. And if he doesn't get drafted first overall, I would take that team away from that owner. Because that is, to me, this is about
he's a talent, no question.
He's a talent with a good attitude who, I mean, while he had tremendous stats, I don't think he's the kind of guy that wants to flash tremendous. He wants to win. And he understands the game well. And to me, that's the one thing that seems to separate him from most other collegiate quarterbacks, is just he seems to have a Tom Brady-like winning attitude in his head, where you do what you need to do to win the game.
Mm-hmm. Character count. You've said it twice now in this show.
Yeah, absolutely. But but it's what's been a bad year. Although I want to point out one thing. It was me who correctly predicted at midseason, after the Steelers were 1-3 or 1-4, that Duquesne could be the best team in Pittsburgh.
Right, you did.
I just want to point that out. And we've, ever since that show, look at what Pittsburgh teams have done all of a sudden. It's not been the shitstorm. I mean, the Steelers and the Penguins, I was looking at Malkin and Crosby have been on the ice together for 2 games this year.
That's insane.
And, I mean, these guys aren't getting injuries where you just, he's a pussy type of injury.
No.
Major injuries. Yeah. And I mean, Sullivan and Rutherford learned a lesson last year themselves with Phil Kessel, which, by the way, at the Steel City Sports Shop across from PNC, we'll give them a shameless plug here. They have Phil Kessel shirts very cheap there. If you're looking for a quality Penguin shirt that has Phil Kessel on it. But, this points out what everybody thought maybe was happening with Phil Kessel. That he had turned into maybe divisive character on the team. And I mean, Mike Sullivan has reshaped that team as Mike Tomlin has done.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of character. This reminds you of 2016 at this point, when these kids were coming up with character and they were filling in flawlessly as the stars were going down. Biggest trade they're going to make are when these guys all get healthy.
Yeah. No, I agree. And even Johnson's playing well at defense this year.
Oh, yeah.
He's quite an improvement. But, you got two amazing goalies right now, too. I mean, you think about it, the depth at the goaltender position.
Well, and as I said to, in honor of Gary, we'll make this statement. Patty sent me a text. She hates Murray and is in love with Fleury. So she sends me a text after Jari's second shutout in a row. See? And I, of course, sent her back. I said, yeah, you're right. See? We have two better goalies now than Fleury. So, it's the defense is playing well. They're playing well on the road. That's a character thing. I mean, I as bad as the season was looking for Pittsburgh sports, we're having a nice end of the year. Even Pitt basketball's had a couple, beat K-State, beat Florida State, Kansas State. They've had some nice wins, and they look like they're getting better too, even though, they're pussies.
They are. They hear the Dukes.
Let's call a pussy. But they're getting to that next level too. They finished 500 this year, which is a very good possibility. That program takes off. He's a great recruiter. He's a great coach for a pussy.
He is.
Yeah. But
and this Penguin team was actually fun to watch. I went to the game this weekend. Yeah, it was a fun time, and they just kept coming back. And
sure.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, I thought we'd be a lot more frustrated by now. I thought this was going to be the year the Penguins didn't make it. It's only halfway through. It's a close race, but they are significantly better than they were a year ago. And
then you get Sid back, and then you get Hornquist back, and then you get like you said, it's the best trade that they're going to make.
No, and you think of what Sid was going through. I mean, that just didn't happen. I mean, he was suffering through that and playing top-level hockey. I mean, there's a guy, the best player of the decade, as voted on by the NHL. As we were talking McCutcheon, let's certainly give him kudos.
Right.
And I'll give you, and we'll talk about this more when my book comes out in March on the Pirate All-Star team. We were talking McCutcheon. I'll give you this one position. I voted him as the all-time center fielder over Max Carey and Lloyd Wayner on the all-time team. And if you look at his stats in a 5-year period compared to Max Carey's and Lloyd Wayner, who I think are both a tad overrated when it comes to Hall of Famers, McCutcheon really had some superior years here.
He did.
And that was probably the toughest position to vote for, just because of the closeness of it all. I think what we saw this decade, you talk about him as a good guy. In my eyes, we saw the best center fielder this city has ever seen.
Yeah, the only one that I might have put Andy Van Slyke up there as well, but
he was in the final group.
Yeah,
I agree with you. He was in the final group.
But yeah, I mean, he had a great career. A lot of frustration at the end.
Yeah. But I mean, for 4 or 5 years, for 3 years, he should have won 2 MVPs.
I think so.
He arguably could have won 3. And of course, the other years of that peak, he was certainly one of the best players in the game. So he probably, along with, I compare him to Kai Kyler
So an Archie Vaughn.
and
It
Archie
was like
Vaughn.
Archie Vaughn. He had that 5-year period where he was arguably the best shortstop in baseball.
He absolutely. He had a great 5-year period. Barry Bonds certainly, where his 7 years weren't certainly ones that would make him the best left fielder in Pirate history. He had one of the best 3 or 4 year streaks in team history for sure.
Yeah.
His problem is his other years were average to below average. 3 of his 7 years here.
He had under 250 a couple years too. Yeah,
absolutely. But he had a 220 season also that kind of brought him down. But certainly McCutcheon's streak are certainly comparable to those. I was talking. They were there's one site on Facebook, great site run by Stan Phillips, who's a real good guy from New York. It's called Baseball Life, and he put some interesting questions on there, and he put a thing on Archie Vaughn being the first to hit 2 home runs. And to me, that was the one thing that certainly might have dominated Archie Vaughn's career, is every time he reached greatness, somebody was up there to, kick him out of the headlines. He hits the 2 home runs, and Ted Williams hits what's considered the greatest home run in All-Star game history to win the game. And then, of course, he makes the All-Star or the Hall of Fame finally, and the Hall of Fame puts out one of the what do they call the damn envelopes?
Yeah,
they misspell his name.
Misspell his name, right?
Well,
he would easily be the best shortstop in Pirates history if it weren't for Hannes Wagner too. So
exactly, and he dies tragically as number 21, but he never gets remembered because somebody had to even usurp him in death and die even more heroically. But Bill James actually, that was one of the things I always loved about Archie. He names him as the second greatest shortstop of all time. Now, this was before Jeter hit his prime, but he makes a case for him as the second greatest shortstop behind Hannes Wagner of all time. And again, it was that 5-year peak that you spoke of that is one of his bases. He calls it one of the great 5-year streaks in the history of the game.
Well, when you think about this, he had a late season slump. He went something like 3 for 27, or else he could have hit 400. He ended up with 385. Was fun.
And actually, that's
still the franchise record.
That would be interesting. Back then, sacrifice flies were counted as at bats.
That's right.
And John Thorne, the baseball historian, came out and figured out Ted Williams would have hit 416 in 1941.
Wow.
If not for that fact. So I don't have time now, but I'd like to eventually go back and see how many sacrifice flies, if you go through, they do list the sacrifice flies, Archie would have had in what was it, 35?
Yeah. Yeah.
And see what he would have batted with if the sacrifice flies were not counted as
outs. Wow. Wow. I forgot all about that.
Yeah. So that certainly would be something to go back, and I'm sure he would have hit 400.
Yeah.
If you look at that, but that'll be something for 2020.
I think we have a project.
We have a project. Actually, that's one thing, and we'll talk about it with our group here. I was thinking of the next. What do we do after the Civic Arena book? It's time for Steel City Diamonds. 37 essays, and this can be one of them. 37 essays on baseball in Pittsburgh, and certainly not the traditional, things that we write about the Pirates normally.
I think that would be a great one. I'm in.
All right, and this can be one of the articles. I think that'd be a great thing in there. But yeah, no, I think that should be our next project.
And I think we can answer that trivia question of who's the only person to play for both the Pirates and the Penguins.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Vince Lashide.
Vince Lashide, yes.
Absolutely. We could certainly write something about him. But the guy who, name escapes me now, the only guy to play for the Steelers and Pirates,
Oh, shoot.
just passed away recently.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You talk about Willard Mecklenburg for 2 seconds. I'm going to look that up. What's your favorite Will Mecklenburg story?
Oh, my goodness. Just, I still think the greatest thing ever done was the turning in of the term paper written by Matt Davis.
The fictional Matt Davis.
The fictional Matt Davis, who was in all of our how-to journalism courses.
And Willard, One-Eyed Willard's response?
Davis.
Oh, no, that was Katz. That wasn't Mark, was it? That was Katz.
Frank Katz, yes.
Rex David Johnson.
Rex Johnson.
Rex Johnson, the only man to play, died on December 15th of this year.
Huh.
I want to say, where did he? He was South Carolina. He was a star at South Carolina, USC. I'm sorry, not South Carolina, USC. So the only player to play on both the Pirates, RIP. Certainly did nothing for either team, but that's certainly a great title to have.
So what do you got this weekend? What's your feeling for Sunday?
I didn't think they would beat the Bills. I think they have enough to beat the Jets. I think they're going to be a little more conservative. It's going to be a low-scoring game. I'm going to say 17-14.
I'm going to give you
Hey, wait a minute. Ignore what I just said. Ignore. Are you ignoring it?
I am. I'm going to say it's going to be a 19-13
Okay.
affair.
I just ignored what you said. So you get your hat on. It doesn't count. The Steelers are going to win 17-14.
I got a 19-13 game that's going to be painful to watch, that there's going to be, again, there's going to be more growing pains for Duck. I think that they're going to stay the course and not go back to Rudolph, but I think it's not going to be pretty. And hopefully they get out of there with
win or lose.
I got them as a win, but it's not going to be pretty.
Although that is one thing I will say about last week. In the fourth quarter, my first thought was you need to flip gears here and go to Rudolph and see what he can do, because Duck was done at that point, in my eyes.
Yeah, I think, confidence is a funny thing.
Yeah.
It can come and it can go.
Yeah.
Certainly when. I mean, the thing that I thought had separated him from Rudolph was his decision-making, that he was able to read the field a little bit faster. But he had a couple of plays where he had guys open that he just chose the wrong person.
He was, I think there was a confidence level at that point. I agree with you on. And I'm going to show you, before we head out here, I'm going to show you the post of the week. Let me find it here. I won't show you the one because while it made me laugh, it probably isn't a popular thing to show at Christmas. But can you see that?
I can. A Shep sighting. You got to love it. You got to love it.
That's from a guy named Tim Baker who just daily – we met him at the Unlucky 21. He's a pilot. But he is, like, to me, the funniest guy on Facebook. He just always, every day, something makes me laugh my ass off. And well, the picture of Herman Munster that I sent you was today. I said frankincense, not Frankenstein, was the comment to it. Made me laugh. That was the thing that made me laugh my ass the hardest. Anytime you get a Shemp sighting.
Oh. Yeah, I have to pull out my license plate again.
Wow. It's classic. So you're going to do the Seven Fishes Tuesday night?
I am. I'm starting to do some prep.
All right. What are our Seven Fishes this year?
We will be doing shrimp. We will be doing calamari. We will be doing oysters. We will be doing halibut. We will be doing linguine with clam sauce and linguine with anchovy sauce. And what am I missing? Oh, smelts. What is the smelts?
Yeah, do the smelts. They're tradition. They're seven. Seven. My family got away from that years ago, and I kind of always wish I like the linguine angle. Those are two of my favorite linguines.
Well, the anchovy one is to die for.
Well, maybe I'll come out to the Beaver Valley.
Come on out. You're invited. Come on out.
I would love to with Mama Fletcher.
Yeah, so, we'll be eating around 6. Come on out.
Sounds good. I finish up around 4:30, 5 o'clock from Christmas hell. Only 4 days left. Then it's after Christmas hell, which is even worse. So
retail.
You don't get that out your way. You're a lucky man.
No.
You're a lucky man. But well, my friend, you have a wonderful Christmas. Maybe we'll pick up right after the holidays for another show. I'm not sure we'll get Gary next week, but at the beginning of the year, we'll welcome our baloney man back.
Yeah, he's a beaten man right now, I imagine.
It sounds it, unfortunately. Sounds it, but all right.
All right, man.
You take care, my friend.